All About Beer receives underwriting support from Goldfinger Brewing. They understand the importance of independent journalism in the beer space, and their support helps fund original work. Learn how you can affordably support journalists by visiting allaboutbeer.com/support.
Welcome to Drink Beer, Think Beer, the podcast that gets to the bottom of every pint. I'm John Holl. What's the state of IPA in America right now? One brewery that has long had a finger on the pulse weighs in. Jude of Chicago's Hop Butcher for the World is here for an in-depth conversation about all things hops, haze, and drinkability. First up, two quick event notices. The first one, I guess I should say, All About Beer is once again thrilled to be participating in the Little Beers Festival. Hosted by Goodword Brewing in the charming town of Duluth, Georgia, tickets are now on sale for the March 29th event. It's one of the best beer fests in the country, no joke. And you should get your tickets now before it sells out. Go to goodwordbrewing.com/events. And this summer, All About Beer is headed to the Black Fly Beer Camp at Great Camp Sagamore in the Adirondack Mountains. Join us and a host of breweries for a weekend of tastings, meals, education, and fellowship. I'll be there. M. Souter's going to be there. Nate Schweber's going to be there, plus so many others. Visit sagamore.org to get your tickets. As you're no doubt aware, the fires in the Los Angeles area were devastating. And as per usual, when natural disasters strike, brewers are stepping up with a special beer. Common Space Brewing is spearheading the effort, and you can learn more about the beer and how you can help by following the Instagram account at WeLoveLABeer. And obviously, Western North Carolina can still use your support. The North Carolina Craft Brewers Guild is organizing a fundraising effort called Pouring for Neighbors to benefit breweries that were affected by Hurricane Helene last year. Learn more by visiting drinkncbeer.org. Additionally, I hope you'll consider supporting All About Beer. There's a number of ways you can do it. Through the Patreon, through our underwriting, through advertising. The only way that we can continue to bring original shows like this or the All About Beer podcast or articles on our site is through your support. Visit allaboutbeer.com/support to learn more. And thanks to this episode's sponsor. Today's episode is brought to you by Stomp Stickers. Stomp is a proud member of the Brewers Association that produces a wide variety of printed brewery products, such as beer labels, keg collars, coasters, beer boxes, and much more. Stomp's website features an easy-to-use digital design tool, low quantity orders, fast turnaround times, and free domestic shipping. Visit stompstickers.com and use code ThinkBeer for 15% off of your first order. You can always join the conversation online with social media by following us at All About Beer. We're on Blue Sky and Instagram and Facebook and some of the other sites as well. So a few weeks back, I had the chance to be in Chicago visiting Dovetail for some Rauch beer. As the afternoon ended, I realized I had a few minutes before going to the airport, so I popped over to Hop Butcher for the World. A few years ago, the decade-old brand moved into the former Half Acre spot in Chicago. And as they've done since the beginning, they turned out hazy IPAs of note. From the beginning, the brewery captured the excitement of the juicy IPA craze and have continued to ride the wave. So what's changed? Where are things headed? And how are hop-forward ale producers staying engaged? For all of those answers, I turned to Jude, the co-founder and president of the brewery. He joined me via Zoom. Here's our conversation. Thanks for being on this week. I appreciate it. I had the chance to visit your tap room for the first time just a couple of weeks ago when I was in Chicago. And it prompted me to reach out for this conversation because you guys are on my mind now and again. Like you're good at social media. You show up on stuff. And I think back to some of those early days of the early Hop Butcher days. And that's kind of where I want to start a little bit. And how you all kind of captured the zeitgeist of juicy, hazy IPA, back when there was a lot of excitement around it, and there's probably still some excitement around it. But I wonder if you can kind of take me back to some of those early days when you were putting the brewery concept together and you were thinking about beers that you wanted to put out into the world that had the name on it. What was that like for you all back then?
we got into beer, and a lot of it was hoppy beer. We got into beer of all styles, but in particular, we are really, enjoying what Three Floyds, or what we can get from Three Floyds and Half Acre out here. And it was a really exciting time of just, gathering so much information, both from our palates and what we are drinking, to what we could read and what magazines we could subscribe to and what places we can visit. And the culture was just like so intoxicating. And the times were ripe. I mean, it seemed like the barrier for starting a brewery, or the barriers of entry for starting a brewery, were low at the time.
Hmm.
And there was a lot of cool breweries around here, like Pipeworks and Spiteful and Beguile, that I could think of, that were starting breweries. And you already had Metropolitan and Half Acre here, and Two Brothers out in the burbs, and Goose and Rock Bottom. So you saw that it could be possible, and we just wanted to be a part of it. So we started by doing an alternating proprietorship, brewing out of already existing breweries. And that's where we got our feet wet. We did buy a 15-barrel fermenter, but everything else, all the other overhead, we didn't necessarily have to take on.
Yeah.
And what we said early on, we'll be celebrating our 10th anniversary this
It's wild
month.
to me. Yeah.
Can't believe it.
Yeah.
What we said was, like we said, let's brew hoppy beer. And we said, whatever it is, and later we'd say, whether it's clear or whether it's hazy, it's always hoppy. But then we had said, let's do that one, because it's our favorite style to brew, and especially Citras and Mosaics and Galaxies and all the cool hops that were in Nelson Sauvins that were coming on at the time. You just insanely had our attention captured. And what we just hoped is, if when people are going to buy a hoppy beer, we hope that, because we're always brewing hoppy beer, that we would be the second or the third or the fourth brewery that they picked up. But that when they're thinking of buying hoppy beer, that they're always associating us with that idea, so that hopefully they pick up our beer. And years later, IPA, continues to reign supreme, and more people are brewing it. But then it doesn't sound as like, regular of a concept, just to go on and say, hey, we're just going to brew hoppy beer. And really, looking back, that was probably one of the best decisions that we ever thought of.
Really?
It
I
was
like,
funny. My business partner and I, we met each other working in sports, and uh, we were selling season tickets and group tickets. And there was a book by Al Rees or Jack Trout. I think it was called. They're in advertising. I think it was called Positioning or Focus. And they just went into, if you're either first, if you're not first, you hope to be second. If you're not second, you hope to be third. So I think that was going on at the time, where it's, let's have a focus so that we can drive a point home.
yeah. And some of those early days, like when I think back 10 years ago now, and because we were really just starting to see the emergence of New England style, of, hazy, juicy, whatever. And it was sort of like this Wild West, where you had some brewers that were putting all kinds of adjuncts in. It was, how many pounds per barrel can you get into your beer, just for the sake of saying how many pounds per barrel were in the beer. But, customers were excited by it, and brewers were having fun fucking around with it. And like, there was, looking back on it now, it's like, wow, that was kind of wild. That was some of those beers that were being made. And I wonder, when you look back on the brewing approach that you had then versus what you have now, what, if anything, has changed?
Then I'm thinking of beers by like Maine Beer Co., and I'm thinking of Half Acre beers, and I'm thinking of like Surly Abrasive, and I'm thinking of like Great Lakes, like Mind Chill Wave, I think. And the beers are clear, and they have a slight dry hop haze to them, but they're still so incredibly juicy. And I don't know if that's like 2012, 13, 14, but that beer was tasting amazing. And then I think really with like Instagram, you started to see pictures of these beers that looked like orange juice, and we had
Yeah.
never tried them. We'd never tried them before, and we set out to make one, but that was, I mean, those images were so, they just captured you. And then when you tasted them, they very much reminded you of those main beers that I was talking about, those half acre beers, except they were hazy, but they did the same thing. They just had flavor and aroma that was jumping off the glass, or jumping out of the glass. And, you know, I don't know then consciously how much, you know, we would have changed things as much. We are trying to nail uh, what we thought the style would be, or where like our senses were kind of taking us. Because then it's funny if you talk to like Matt and Gabriel from Half Acre, and when we were reading like books like with Matt Brindleson and Vinny Schiller, so talking about, you know, 2 pounds per barrel in the IPA book or the hops book being like
Yeah.
next big thing. And then that was big for us. And then you found out that you really had to go into the 3, 4 pounds per barrel in the hazy IPA thing. And that's where we continue to go up. But it's funny, you talk to those guys and they'll say 2 is too small. You know, remember when 2 is huge. So, you know, over time, we did increase. You know, we were probably under dry hopping at first at, you know, 1 pound per barrel. And then we got into the 3s, and we still felt that, you know, our contemporaries beers had more aroma and flavor than ours. And I think that crept up over the course of several years. We never got really extreme, like 12 pounds per barrel, but, you know, we got to around 3.6, and then we get into 4, and maybe we're getting nose blind, or, you know, our sensory driven was going bonkers out of the roof. And we got about, you know, a couple years ago, maybe as high as like 4.5 pounds per barrel, which is still, I think, compared to some others, still kind of
Sure.
modest.
Yeah. No,
And
I'm actually surprised to hear your number that low. Like I remember drinking your beers and just sort of that you know, that energy that you all had behind you of, you know, the traders and, you know, the can drops and people going nuts and everything. I would have put you in the, you know, 8 to 12 pound per barrel just based on the outside reception that your beers had at the
sure.
time.
You know, it's tough too. It's just how I know you guys will talk about like double dry hop and what does that exactly mean? You know, we always
That's
refer
an old
to,
steal this beer reference, but yeah.
we always like, you know, we're always referring to just what's in the total dry hop. So maybe sometimes these numbers reflect the what's in the kettle and the whirlpool, and what's in the dry hop. But we never were extreme. But I don't know, just from our sensory, we were always trying to push. But and that's always led it to the point now recently we've kind of backed that down, where we found balance both in like aroma intensity and in flavor and mouthfeel and everything. Just kind of going back to where we might have been, you know, a year or two ago. So we're right in the kind of the mid 3s, and we still feel, you know, we feel our beer's been better than ever. Never been better than ever.
Huh. Is some of that just changing palettes, or your own changing palettes, or just a little bit more confidence in 10 years in of what you know people are going to continuously buy from you? Like that, it sounds like a, you know, a healthy take to have of going back to roots and, you know, changing it up from where it has been. And I just sort of wonder where, you know, what that's born from.
You know, we always kept our ear to the ground, and above all, we love beer, and we drink a lot of other breweries' beers, and we're always trying to kind of just, you know, we keep our ear to the ground in terms of quality ingredients and, you know, the finished product, and we're always trying to see where our beer stacks up. But again, we are fans of beer and of that experience and the satisfaction that beer provides. So it was always born out of, is it where, you know, where does it stack up, and is it at a level that we're happy with? And, you know, we want a certain type of quality and intensity to the things that we brew, and is it there yet? So that always drove it. So it's
Yeah.
nice to say that once we started tasting things and say, I think this needs to back down, that it was also born of that idea where it, that we were able to say, I think we kind of prefer something more in this realm. And if that meant it was more balanced, then I think how lucky are we, in that sense. So I think it could be, I mean, right now I feel like the hops have been better than ever. We've gotten more information on the hops than ever. The advanced hop products like the Hyper Boosts and the Hop Keefs that are out are taking beer to the next level. And yeah, maybe, and maybe it is a reflection of just kind of where our palates are. I mean, another thing too, we have two
Yeah.
breweries, and we've always prided ourselves on freshness, and we'll can and keg beers on Mondays and Tuesdays, and we'll bring them from our brewery on the south side to our brewery on the north side. And we like to get those on as fast as we can. Sometimes we'd go and we'd drink a beer in the tap room, take a look at it and be like, I don't know, this just went on a van ride from, Bedford Park over to Chicago. We might have shaken up, any hops that are still in suspension in this, so it's like, so if we're not cool with not tapping the beer for another couple days, then maybe from the start, we should hop it a little lower. That's kind of that's half serious, half a joke towards our taproom manager.
No, but that's, I mean, it's you're going to know yourself best at this point. And I'm also wondering from like 10 years on, it's got to be a double-edged sword on some level, maybe, of how am I trying to communicate this? 10 years on, when you guys were being traded for, people were lining up, there was, a real excitement around the brand and the beers. 10 years on, like there's still expectations that I imagine the regular customers have from you, the long-term customers have from you. And based on my recent visit, like people haven't forgotten about you. They're still showing up. They're still really excited. And, seeing some of the online chatter and everything, people are still excited about the beers. But like, how important is it, while your palates are shifting, to also be paying attention to what those long-term drinkers want and even what those new folks walking through your door are looking for?
My dad, always said the same things that made you successful in the past, will be the same things that will make you successful, in the future.
Sure.
So, I think that like our brewery was always born of, an extreme passion behind the beer, behind what goes into it and the storytelling around it. And I also think like an insane amount of gratitude and gratification from just even being in the industry and having a chance to, be a player amongst our colleagues and the people that we look up to, and have a creative outlet and have a place that, people either go to or be a brewery whose beers people seek out and bring home and make them a part of their lives.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's always been to our core. It's always been at our core. So I think sticking with that, not forgetting about that. And again, when it goes into the storytelling that we do on social media or the intention behind our beers, but to that point, having a feel for what's coming around the corner and what the latest tops are and what the best of the best tastes like has always kind of informed our taste. So I do think it's important to see what's coming online. I think like everywhere out of Orange, California,
Oh yeah.
that line of intentional seltzer making that they do looks great, tastes great. We had a chance to taste those beers when we were out there. Even Green Cheek, when you see them at like the Firestone Walker Invitational, we got to have some of those beers at the Weldworks Invitational last month. Those types of things are exciting, and to see people get excited about them and to see their excitement about them, I think is important, and see if there's a place for us to do that intentionally from our tap room. But also to be aware of still what the emerging styles, what the popular styles are. I think we've been fortunate that, hazy IPA, West Coast IPA, and hoppy lager, I think are three of the most exciting styles right now. And they happen to be our three favorite styles to brew, I would say. So there's always been a nice dovetailing of these things that's worked out so far.
Yeah. So where there's a lot that I want to unpack from all of that, but you've talked about um, getting better information on the hops from some of the growers, and then some of these new hop products that are out there, and then some of the newer hops, or even some of the older hops that are out there as well. One, I guess, let's start with experimentation and where you guys are looking to continue to innovate in the IPA space. Um, what of some of those things that you brought up before, as far as hop products or new hops or even you know existing hops? Where's some of that creativity bubbling up right now?
There are hops like right now might be one of the most exciting times as far as new hop varietals go.